Hello friends, welcome to our channel. We are going to explore the depths of human psyche with a brilliant book by Gustav Jung called The Archetypes of the Soul. This is one of his most important books, but it's also one of his last books written in 1934, which means it was written before Jungian psychology became popular, so some things might not be explained in modern terms, but it's still a fantastic read. Jung wrote this book when he was around 60 years old and already considered a senior scholar. He could afford to be more speculative than in his earlier works, and indeed, the book reads like a collection of essays, each one exploring various aspects of the psyche. In my overview, I will try to show that this book is both profound and practical, how it can be applied to understanding ourselves and others. The book is divided into 3 parts, each containing 5 chapters, and they are presented as lectures given in a seminar, but I don't think it makes sense to go through them one by one. Instead, I will discuss the main points in each part, keeping in mind that they build up on each other. So let's get started. Part 1. The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious. In the first part, Jung discusses what archetypes actually are and where they come from. First, he describes the archetype as an image and model in the collective unconscious that guides psychic development and expresses itself in myths, dreams, art, and the like. He also talks about how archetypes manifest in the psyche through what he calls complexes, which are emotionally charged mental structures that influence our thoughts and behaviors. Jung argues that complexes arise when there is a disturbance in the psyche, such as a traumatic event or a strong emotion, and that they become fixed if we don't deal with them properly. He also says that complexes can either be personal or collective, depending on whether they stem from our individual experiences or from our shared human heritage. Jung further elaborates on the idea that the collective unconscious contains universal archetypes that all humans share, such as the archetype of the mother, the child, the wise old man, the trickster, and so forth. He claims that these archetypes are not created by humans, but rather humans are created by them, meaning that our psyches are shaped by these archetypal patterns that transcend time and culture. In the second chapter, Jung dives deeper into the archetype of the self, which he considers the central archetype that integrates the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche and gives it wholeness and meaning. He also introduces the concept of individuation, which is the process of becoming a unique individual by realizing and integrating the various aspects of the psyche, including the shadow. In the third chapter, Jung explores the archetype of the shadow, which represents the dark and hidden aspects of the psyche that we reject and repress. He also talks about how the shadow can become a source of creativity and growth if we acknowledge and integrate it, but also harm us if we deny and project it. Jung further discusses the process of projection, which is the unconscious mechanism by which we place our own psychic contents, such as our shadow, onto someone else without realizing it. He also talks about how projection creates both good and evil in the world, depending on whether we project our positive or negative qualities onto others. Jung also mentions something called the mandala, which is a symbol of wholeness and completion that appears in various cultures and time periods. He suggests that the mandala archetype reflects our innate desire for unity and harmony, and that creating mandalas can be a form of active imagination that helps us connect with our unconscious and integrate our psyche. In the fourth chapter, Jung tackles the controversial topic of what he calls the libido. Remember that Jung uses the term libido differently than Freud. For Jung, libido is not just sexual drive, but any kind of psychic energy that motivates human behavior. Jung also introduces the concept of the ego, which is the conscious personality that develops out of the interaction between the conscious and unconscious psyche. He also talks about the process of symbolization, which is how the psyche transforms unconscious contents into conscious symbols that we can understand and interpret. In the fifth and final chapter of Part 1, Jung discusses the methodology of analytical psychology, which is the approach he developed to understand the psyche. He explains how his method involves exploring dreams, fantasies, myths, and other sources of data to uncover the symbolic meaning and hidden patterns of the psyche. Jung also emphasizes the importance of intuition and empathy in his method, and the necessity to consider both the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche. Part 2. Psychology of the Unconscious. Part 2 begins with Jung discussing the symbolism of dreams, which he views as a manifestation of the unconscious psyche that can reveal our hidden motives, conflicts, and potentials. Jung also talks about different types of dream symbolism, such as personal symbols, which have a special meaning for the individual, and collective symbols, which are shared by all humans due to their common humanity and cultural background. Jung also discusses the process of dream interpretation, which involves understanding the symbolic language of the unconscious and connecting the dream content to the dreamer's personal and collective contexts. In the second chapter, Jung delves into the psychology of the word, arguing that words carry a lot of meaning beyond their literal definitions. He discusses the etymology of words and how they reveal the historical and cultural roots of meaning. Jung also talks about the power of words to evoke emotions, create images, and influence people's beliefs and behaviors. He also mentions something called the word association test, which is a method to study the unconscious mind by asking people to say the first word that comes to mind when they hear a certain stimulus word. In the third chapter, Jung focuses on the psychology of the number, arguing that numbers also have a lot of meaning and significance. He discusses the symbolism of numbers in different cultures and religions, and how they relate to the stages of human development and the structure of the psyche. For example, Jung says that the number 7 symbolizes completeness and perfection because it is the middle number between 1 and 10. In the fourth chapter, Jung explores the psychology of the symbol, which he views as a fundamental element of human cognition and communication. He defines a symbol as a sign that has a meaning different from its literal meaning, and that expresses a relationship between the conscious and unconscious psyche. Jung also talks about the nature of symbolism and how it arises from the psyche's need to express its hidden contents in a form that is understandable to the conscious mind. Jung also mentions different types of symbolism, such as personal symbolism, which is unique to the individual, and collective symbolism, which is shared by all humans due to their common humanity and cultural background. In the fifth and final chapter of this section, Jung discusses the psychology of the irrational number, arguing that numbers like pi and 0.3092 can also have a psychological meaning and significance. He discusses how these numbers embody certain qualities and characteristics that relate to the structure of the psyche and the nature of reality. Jung also talks about how these numbers can be used to understand and interpret various phenomena, such as dreams, fantasies, and myths. Part 3. Psychological types. In this part, Jung discusses his theory of psychological types, which is based on the idea that the psyche has 4 main functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition, and that these functions determine how we perceive the world and make decisions. He also talks about how these functions can be used to understand and appreciate other people who have different types than us. In addition, Jung elaborates on how these functions interact with each other and how they can create both harmony and conflict within the psyche. He also talks about how these functions can be used to diagnose mental disorders and how they can be used to develop therapies that are tailored to the individual's type. Jung also discusses how these functions can be used to understand and interpret dreams, fantasies, and myths. In the second chapter, Jung goes deeper into the dynamics of the psyche, especially the interaction between opposites and how they can create both problems and solutions. He also talks about how these opposites can be integrated into a whole, and how this integration leads to psychological maturity and wisdom. In the third chapter, Jung discusses how these psychological types influence our relationships with other people, especially romantic relationships. He also talks about how these types can create both attraction and conflict in relationships, and how they can lead to both harmony and disharmony in society. In the fourth chapter, Jung applies his theory of psychological types to the realm of religion and spirituality. He discusses how these types can shape our beliefs, practices, and experiences in religion, and how they can create both diversity and unity in religious traditions. He also talks about how these types can help us understand and appreciate different religious and spiritual perspectives. In the fifth and final chapter of the book, Jung summarizes his theory of psychological types and discusses its implications for understanding ourselves and others. He also talks about the limitations of his theory and how it can be expanded and modified in the future. Overall, this part of the book is very insightful and helpful for anyone who wants to learn more about personality psychology and human relationships. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on new videos.